All right, this is January the 12th, 2011. And I'm in the home of Mr. Chester Lynn here on Ocracoke Island. Thank you, Chester, for having me here today. I really appreciate your time. And we're here to talk today a little bit about you and about your love for Portsmouth Island. And first of all, I want to get some background. Would you mind telling me your mom and daddy's name?
My mother's name was Audrey Carol O'Neill Lynn.
And how did you spell Carol? How did she spell Carol?
C-A-R-O-L.
Just a regular Carol.
Just regular.
And O'Neill was O''N.
O-N-E-A-L.
E-A-L. Okay. Because there's different spellings for O'Neill.
Not on Ocracoke.
Not on Ocracoke, but for folks doing the transcribing, we try to clearly clarify that.
Yeah.
And what was your daddy's name?
My daddy's name was John Edgar Lynn.
And were they both from Ocracoke?
No. My father came here in the Coast Guard and met my mother. He was born in Altona, Pennsylvania, but raised in Washington, D.C. By his aunt. And my mother, her descendants go back to, I think I counted 11 generations, something like that, they go back on Ocracoke. To at least to the 1600s.
And when was he here approximately?
He came here in the 40s.
In the 40s.
And met Mama. And
now, did he try to take her out of Ocracoke?
No, Daddy. He
knew better than that, didn't he?
Daddy knew better, and he loved Ocracoke. I mean, he didn't care about ever leaving at all across the inlet to go anywhere because he was happy about Ocracoke. He loved Ocracoke, and I can say with Mom and Daddy, I lived here with them all my life. My father died when he was 48 years old, so I was like 21 when he died. But never in this house did when my mother died. Some people come to the viewing, and my neighbors had said they lived next door to us since the 70s, and they never heard Mom and Dad ever have an argument.
Wow!
And they only had one, and I know what that one was, and that was the only argument they ever had. I mean, and that was strange, I guess, to some people, but they didn't. You know.
Well, I would call it blessed. I wouldn't call it strange.
I don't know. I mean, he was. I mean, I'm not used to arguments and tempers and all that because we didn't have it.
Right. Now, do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have one sister left living in Washington State. I have one sister passed away, and both my mother and father passed away. My grandparents have passed away. I have no immediate family. My sister, we're not close, and we'll not ever have anything to do with each other because some family problems. But all my family's gone.
That happens, yeah.
They're all in the cemeteries.
Well, I had that prospect of happening to me too because I'm not married and don't have any children, and my sister don't have any children. So, but that's okay when you got good friends like you do here on Ocracoke. Mm-hmm. And I guess growing up on Ocracoke, I asked Alton this, about Portsmouth, Tell me about what your connection to Portsmouth is.
My connection, my great-grandmother was born on Portsmouth. My family Bible reads that it says December the 23rd, 1889, James Holloway Fulcher was married Monday night, December the 23rd, 1889, to Helen Dixon on Portsmouth. Then later, it records that 8 boats tied together, made their way back to Ocracoke, and it was called the Wedding Chain. And they came back that night. Friends of mine that was part of the wedding party, which are now dead and going on. Her daughter was told me all my life about the wedding party and about because they built the house at the end of this road I live on, and he bought her here to live in the new house. And my grandparents and my grandmother and all of her brothers and sisters were born in it.
So is that close to where Earl O'Neill lives now?
It's next house.
Next house?
Yes.
Before it?
that way.
On the other side, on the street, on the intersection side.
Yeah.
Oh,
because where Earl's House was, all was family. That was all Fulcher property, and that was all, I'm kin to him, and it's all family. And that's that's all family. They originally owned property all the way to the harbor.
So he married her and brought her back over.
He married her, brought her back here. I grew up with my grandfather going over to Portsmouth. One of the first.
What was his name?
George O'Neill. He owned the Elita with Elmo Fulcher. And my grandfather had been captain of the dredge when they pumped the harbor out. He told stories in 1918 when they rode horse and buggy across the harbor. And he died when I was young, but I certainly remember my grandfather. I loved him to death, and he carried me to Portsmouth all the time. I mean, I went to Portsmouth with him all the time, and that when Henry Pickett was living, and his sister was living, the different ones were there, and we remember that. I remember that going there. They would be clamming and different things, and I remember one of the first remembrance I have is he was helping Marion Gray with the lawnmower or something, and he put some kind of attachment so it would put out smoke for mosquitoes. I don't know, oil dropped on a muffler or something. I'm not sure how it worked, but I remember that, and I remember they were talking about it was a fulgur for mosquitoes at the same time, and as a kid I thought that was funny,
Yeah, and inventive too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are you any kin to Elizabeth Howard O'Neill, who lived just down from where Earl is?
Oh yes. Matter of fact, Elizabeth Howard O'Neill was the one that I have a picture that Jim White had given me a copy of my great-grandmama Emmeline Dixon. And I carried the picture to Elizabeth, and because I knew that she was part of the family, and she could remember the picture, could recognize the picture. And when I carried her the picture, she said, "Well, there it is. There she is." And she kept talking about it, and she kept saying, "Well, look at that. She's always did that, and all that." And I said, "Elizabeth, do you know who it is?" And she kept going on. I said, "Elizabeth," she said, "Well, certainly know who it is." And then she started saying, "Grandma," she said, "Your great-grandmama, or your great-great-grandmama," she said, "Certainly know who it is." And then she left 2 days later and went with her daughter in the winter, and then she passed away during the winter. If I hadn't went, I would have not ever had that verification that it was my great-great-grandmother.
How about that? That's wonderful. I went to see Elizabeth Howard O'Neill, and I interviewed her, actually. Marion Gray introduced her. And she actually told me who Henry Pickett's father was. Mm-hmm. But she made me turn the tape recorder on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I did, and I have never told anybody. But do you know?
I don't know.
It was Sam Tolson.
Okay.
And I'm telling you, you're the first person I'm telling that's who it is, and I'm putting it on tape for the record.
Okay.
She told me that it was Sam Tolson was Henry. Now I don't know about Lizzie's daddy, but I think I know for sure. She said, and I promised her I wouldn't tell anybody. So I have it all these years, and it's been a long time.
It's been a long time.
Been over 20 years. So I'm glad I got that off my chest. But I thought you would enjoy knowing that for me. Well,
I do, and I like knowing things like that. My thing is I have lots of artifacts that I find that I've got from Portsmouth from different people, and Stanley Wayheb at one time was going to develop the whole island. He was going to buy this before the park, and he was going to buy the whole island, and his company was, and they were going to develop it.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I actually got a tax thing where he went to the tax office and found how many people, everybody had owned all the way up to banks. He weren't going to do all the way up banks, but he was going to develop the whole island at one time. His company was. And
the whole of North Core Banks.
Well, he was going to all of Portsmouth Village.
All of Portsmouth Village.
That's what he was going to do. And when I helped Mr. Wayheb, he carried a lot. He sold a lot of property. Instead of doing that, he started selling. He sold them property and was just like a realtor business at the time. And so that's what he was doing. And so he would bring things from the houses where he bought them and went to sell them. He would bring things and put them in his house here at Ocracoke. And I helped Miss Webb. She died at 98. She died in my hands. And she loved me dearly, and I loved her dearly, and she gave me everything she could find that was from Portsmouth. And I mean, there's a picture of two shorebirds that the Motts had painted that is in the Mariners Museum at Cape Lookout, at Harker's Island. That belongs to me. That
the Corsound Museum.
The Corsound Museum. Sorry, yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah,
wonderful. And the Motts, and you're talking about the Mott Applesauce King Motts. They had the
Pilantary
Club.
And then there was supposed to be a cup and saucer from the Tsar of Russia when the Tsar of Russia was at the Pilantary.
Now, I didn't know the Tsar had come there.
He had been there. And Myra had a cup and saucer that when it went down, I think in the 33 hurricane, that Henry Pickett had, we think it was Henry Pickett, or no, it weren't Henry Pickett, it was Joe Abbott.
Yeah, his uncle. Yeah.
That had moved stuff and had carried it to Wash Roberts. And so when Stanley went to sell Wash Roberts, he carried it home. Well, when I was at the house, and Myra's house was we were cleaning. They had put her in a hospital, and we were cleaning it because the cats had been terrible in it. And when it did, Larry, which was the part, he took and knocked it and broke it. And I was going to glue it. He didn't know that. He didn't know that was the cup and saucer from Russia, and he wouldn't let me save it. I wanted to save it and glue it because only the cup was, I think just the handle was broke off of it, but Larry wouldn't do it. He said, the house is full of cups and saucers. We'll get a box and load them and you can have them, but you can't have that one because I'm going to throw it away. And then later he found out that he threw away the cup and saucer that had been from the Tsar of Russia when he visited the Pilantary.
Oh, my stars. How tragic. And there's not a picture or anything of it.
No, he threw it away. It was part of, there was all kinds of artifacts from her house that was there, and some of them we knew and some of them we didn't. Some of them we had to research and do, but she gave me a lot of things, and so I have quite a few pieces, and they come from that house, and they come from, and a lot of papers and stuff where he was going to sell the different houses, and Gregory's great-grandmother, was it Daly, that owned the house there by the community cemetery. Mm-hmm. I have all the documentation where she wrote Stanley, and then the Gilgo place down further when they wrote Stanley about selling them.
How about that?
And
would you be agreeable to let me take some photographs of some of the things that you came from?
Yeah, and what I intend to do, I believe they're going to ask me to be in charge of the community booth, which is at the museum.
Corsound Waterfowl?
Corsound Waterfowl. And I intend to share everything I have.
Wow.
I intend to put a lot of it in there, and some of it, I don't intend to give any of it, because if you give something, somebody can do away with it, and I don't want it done away with.
Right.
And I don't want it put in a museum so somebody can't see it.
Right.
I want it so that somebody can see it,
Right.
because that's the idea of me sharing it, is that so other people can see it and enjoy it too,
Right.
Plus, I have Henry Pickett's shaving brushes. I have his razors. I have the keys to his house.
Oh my goodness! And
the keys to the house where Ella Marie is poured into.
Mm-hmm.
I have the keys that Henry Pickett had them, and
now she had the Elma Dixon house.
Yeah.
She had
and that family and Junice's family, Rudy's family, give me those items.
Oh, how wonderful. I'm hoping that I'll get a chance to talk to Rudy this trip, but I haven't called him. But I hope we'll talk a little bit about the time with his father spent with Henry in his last days. But let's go back to your things and your interest of Portsmouth. So after the family started dying off, you still kept going over to Portsmouth, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I kept going over. All my life I went over to Portsmouth with different people and different friends on the island, different things. And one particular friend of mine was David Merle, and he left Portsmouth, and I left Portsmouth. And so that was one of the people that I really had a lot of fun with. I can actually say, I probably spent the night in almost every house over there. Where he had the keys to most houses, people let him, and we would spend the night in them, and we'd go. We certainly wouldn't harm anything. We would spend the night.
Just loved it so much.
Just loved it. It's when I walk over there and I get off that dock, I feel something hits me, and I feel very special. It's not, I know other people come and I know other people are party to it, but I can actually say that there can't be nobody loves it more than I do. My heart is there. And I have, through the years, me and Dame Earl, we used to walk down and we used to go in the middle community and go through the marsh and up the roads, and it was road up then, and we'd go in the middle community, and I remember the first time, there's two big oaks. One of them's having a little bit of struggle now, the other's not. And one of them is probably 300 some years old, at least that. And when I went with me and Dermot went there when I was real young. There was little tiny oaks that were coming up. Now, I'm older. Now those oaks are, 8 and 10 trunks on them, 8 and 10 inches, and they're like 15 foot high. And the last few years, the park has got me to carry archaeologists over and show them different things. And when I did, I was so proud that every single thing that I wanted to, at the time they were asking me about, and I wanted to show them, every single piece I was able to locate.
Wow.
Because I'm a plant person, I like plants, and I pay attention to that. And I paid attention where those young trees were growing by like a cistern or something like that, and so I can recognize and know where it's at. Because it's all changed and the vegetation's all changed. But the oaks are just gotten bigger and shot higher. And now, because the local people didn't know, and they ruined it, Portsmouth themselves. They cut all the oaks down and used them out of the necessity of having to use them and didn't plant them back. And that devastated Portsmouth. And that's the reason that nobody now sees any over there, because they wiped them out. The middle community.
Did they use them for what?
They used them for to cook with, and they used them for to heat with. Mm-hmm. They used them and then they probably used some for boats. Or not, when I say boats, I take that back. There were some big ships built in Portsmouth.
That's right.
And 2 and 3 masted schooners were built on Portsmouth, and so as well as Ocracoke. And so some of that
took a lot of lumber.
It took a lot of lumber for all that,
You are a florist by trade, is that right?
By trade.
And so that's why you love plants.
That's the reason I love plants. I growing up here when I was in school, they gave me a hard time being a guy and liking flowers. But when the school needed an arrangement, I knew where blueberries were that was blooming in the spring and all these different things in everybody's yard. I got so good at it and knew where so much. They say, watch out, the alumni banquet's coming, and Chester will be here after it, And I would, and they let me have it, Mm-hmm. And that's like when I go to Portsmouth, I pay attention to all the different things, like Portsmouth only has very, very few frogs on it. Mm. As many mosquitoes as there is on Portsmouth, Portsmouth has very few frogs on it. Do you know why?
No.
Raccoons.
Now, why? I don't
The
get
raccoons eat them.
Raccoons eat frogs.
They eat them.
I did.
They eat everything you put in front of them. And there's only a few. All my life going to Portsmouth and rambling through and all that, I've only seen 2 or 3. And that's unbelievable, you know.
Yeah, you would think
you'd be there on a rain and you wouldn't hear them holler, you know. You'd think you would be so loud. Sometimes I had a goldfish pond in my front yard one time, and I had to get rid of it because the frogs. They were so loud that I was scared my neighbors would would do something.
Complain.
Yeah, complain. But that's what we did. I mean, and then through the years, different people. I went there with different people, and I found house sites, and I remember being there sometimes when I find this or I find a grave or I find a house site, I'd holler forever because that's something that I want. It's my ancestors that are buried there, and I want to find them. I know the area after years of study. I know about where the areas where they should be. And some people think it's easy to find. It ain't easy to find. As the park knows, it ain't easy to find. It's growed up, and there's a lot of graveyards that are not found, and there's some that are misunderstood, and there's a few artifacts. I mean, there's a few buildings that were important buildings that's not been found.
For instance, give me a for instance.
The Primitive Baptist Church has never been found.
Now, I have seen on this map that the park has of the village that they have a sort of location for it.
And they're looking at the wrong place.
And everything that I had seen from my oral histories before,
wasn't where
they said it was.
Well, if you say that, that'll make me feel good.
Yeah.
Because every time I see it, makes me mad.
Right.
Because I know it's not where they said it. Because how I know it's not is years and years ago, Dot told me. She said, Chester, this was before. After a while, your mind's not good. You're the good cert mate. But years and years ago, Dot told me, she said, Chester, that's not it's not where they think it is. And then Bobby Hill one time told me, he said, Chester, there's steps in there in that such and such a clump. And it's a big clump. It's a big section. But that's where that Primitive Baptist Church was. Mm-hmm. Because the mistake that somebody made when they said it was on the left-hand side of the straight road. What it is that the misunderstanding thing is after a certain period of time, they didn't clear all the straight road. And it didn't use it. Part of it grew up. So it weren't the straight road. Only half of it was straight road. Then it went into the road went into the middle community, was kept. That was kept open. And then the one went to Tom Gilgo's was kept open. So it's on the left-hand side of that road went to Tom Gilgo's, not the straight road. Mm-hmm. And see, they didn't see that because they forgot it and didn't realize it.
I see.
The graveyard that everybody thinks was in that creek, and everybody thinks it's that big cemetery, and it's not. And I can gladly prove it. How I can prove it is Lionel Cecil that wrote them. They drew it on a map and talked about it. And they talked about that it was on the left-hand side of the straight road up in the hills, sand hills, mm-hmm. next to a certain house. Well, if you get clear of the straight road, if they clear that straight road all the way to that creek, what you'll find that cemetery that those tombs were on the, if you're going down the creek, if you're going from the village, it's on the right-hand side. And they didn't wash there. You know how they didn't wash there? Because when I was small, and I first pulled them tombs out of that creek, the footstones were still standing. That footstone didn't wash there. It was still standing up like it's supposed to be, like the grave hadn't been all washed away, all the way. And I moved them 5 times. I moved them out of that creek, just hating to see that they were destroyed. And finally, that's when the former Bob Vogel, he said, Chester, he said, where do you want them at? And I told him, and he said, I'll have them put there. And within 2 days or 3 days or something, a week or something like that, they were moved. And it took me 15 years. Because 15 years I moved them every time the creek came every time we go up there, year or something like that, we go up there in a boat or whatever, they wash in the creek.
Let me see. Where's that? Can you mark on this map where that was for me? Let's see. You still got your pen? Oh, you do.
Yeah. Okay, now.
Does it go far enough?
Let me see. Let me find where they.
Does it go far enough? It's Warren Creek.
Warren Creek, George Gilgo. This here, is that Joe Dixon, Primitive Baptist Church? This is. Okay, it don't go far now.
It don't go far.
Okay, here it is. See history here?
Okay.
That's the stones that's in the creek.
Okay, circle that for me.
Okay, that's the stones in the creek.
In the creek.
And
it's in Warren Creek?
That's in, okay. They're not there. We moved them.
Okay.
And
where did you move them to? No.
We moved them to the community cemetery.
Okay.
And somewhere in these high hills,
which is south.
Which is
of the road.
Is where that big cemetery, I believe is in here because here on the beach, I don't know if you've ever heard the story that there are telephone poles, and in those telephone poles run across here, telephone, what do you call it? Telegraph poles run across here, and somebody done a survey and they found a tomb in between them. Have you heard that?
No, I
haven't heard that. I got it documented somewhere. I can prove it to you, show you that I'm not lying.
Oh, I wouldn't.
And they didn't bury nobody out on that beach. That weren't where they put them at. That washed across there, right. and that washed from one of them graveyards there. Is what it is because John Wallace's and his tomb they've washed. They're not where their graves, they're in the graveyard, but they washed. That's not where they're buried at. They're buried up on the high section, and neither one of them on top of the grave, And so that's that's where someplace in here.
So mark on here where the Primitive Baptist Church is according to what you've studied.
The Primitive Baptist Church is in this section somewhere. I know that the dipping bat is right through here somewhere, and I know it's not through this section because I've looked at real good. But this is real thick and it's real. There's no roads in it. It's a big section, and that's where it's at. That's the schools there. That's where that's at. That's Vera Willis's. That was Vera Willis's grave they put there, and that they found it back here somewhere. Back here.
Put in Vera Willis right there for me if you wouldn't mind.
I'm gonna let you put that on.
Okay. And let's see. Now the old school.
Okay, the old school was.
Now that's what they have right there, right?
That's
is that right?
And that's right. It's off here more, but
okay.
It is because see right here. There's a cedar tree, about right up in here. There's a cedar tree on the road. We left it there. It's high cedar. You can walk underneath of it, and then there's see what it is. There's the pond here. And everybody thinks that it's on the other side of the pond. It's not there. And everybody been in there. And look, it's not there. It's over here.
Right. And that pond, I remember a story, I think it was Cecil Gilgo told me there was somebody acting up at school and the teacher got after him. And she was going to whoop him. And he went out to that pond and stayed in the middle of that pond so she couldn't come get him. So I know there was a little pond close by.
Yeah. And the ponds, and there are all kinds of ponds, meadows and ponds and all that. But I don't think it's there. No, I could be wrong, but I don't believe it is. You know, and I believe that eventually they find it, they'll know. You know, I know that I wouldn't want nothing to happen to the village or anything like that. But if that underbrush would ever burn off, I'd be there probably before it got out, because then you'd be able to find graveyards and you'd be able to find stuff, you know, where it's overgrown.
Yeah, but we don't want that to happen.
Oh, of course not. My goodness, it happened once before and ruined half of Portsmouth. You know, there was a lot of stuff they lost from it when it did happen.
When did that happen?
It was in the '60s when they had, I think, Junius had a fire and there at the Coast Guard station, and it burned, slammed.
Coast Guard station.
And you can see. I've been all up and down there all the way to the creek, and it burned all the way to the creek.
Wow.
I mean, the parts of the trees and the post are still burnt. There's still evidence of it.
Wow.
And see, there's another grave behind the school that's there now. Somewhere behind here, there is another grave through someplace up in here.
Okay.
Let me see. This is where they. Okay, Ambrose Styron. I'm trying to find the new school.
It won't be on this map, I don't think.
Okay.
This is the. We're going to the secret of Battlestone Hill.
Okay. Years of studies. Well, I finally figured this out, and I remember an interview that somebody had did with somebody, and I don't remember now who it was that was interviewed and said they were born in a house made of Battlestone out on the beach. Have you ever heard this? Okay. Somebody, I don't know if it was Sam Tolson or somebody like that, was supposed to be born in a house. And what it was used when they built those ships. And they had when they lowered them ships out in the ocean, you know, and they had a track or something where they slid them on, you know, to the ocean. And what it was, that Battlestone, that house made out of Battlestone, was used to build them ships out of. And it was also where somebody, I don't know if it was Sam Tones or somebody, I don't remember who it was that was born there. Somebody was born there. I remember the interview talking about, and parts of it. And
now, supposedly Joe Abbott's house was out that way.
His house, that I know where his house was. It's not there. Okay. This was behind the school. Okay. The Battlestone Hill was actually behind the school.
The old school, or the new one.
The new one. And what I know of is that my neighbor, which we grew up together years and years ago when he was growing up young, him and another guy went to the beach, and they went through the old road. They used to be old road past there.
The old road go from?
They went out towards Battlestone Hill and went on to the beach. And they were trying to get
from the schoolhouse.
From the schoolhouse.
Wow.
And what they were trying to do, they were just trying to get to the beach. That's all they were trying to do. And he told me that there were two concrete tombs about this high, about maybe 2 or 3 foot high, and there was holes in them, and they looked in them to see if there was any artifacts or anything in them. They probably were buried below the ground, but they had built up. And he didn't tell me that they had the names on them or, marble on top of them, because he wasn't paying attention to that. He was interested if there was anything inside of them, at the time. But I know, when he told me that, I know that was truth. I mean, it weren't a fabrication by no means. And then a tourist, some guy walked from the beach, and he walked in through the same tree line, and it was probably similar to the same time, roughly in the same time. And the person, when he went into a clump of trees that looked different, and he went and see what the difference was. And in that clump of trees, there was tombstones. marble tombstones, and the marble tombstone, it said on the marble tombstone that one person died during a plague.
Wow.
And when he got in, he took and told he went and found some park people that was there and talked to them, about it, and told them about it. And I don't know if any of them wrote anything down, or they certainly didn't go look for it, by no means. But he did tell them about it, and I know that because it got back to me.
About what time period are we talking about here?
We're probably talking about in the 70s. Mm-hmm. Because and then just the other day when they had the seafood festival, the decoy festival, mm-hmm. I was there, and another guy who goes hunting out on Portsmouth, and he had a hunting blind or something out on the beach, towards the beach, and he found a tombstone. This was not far from the sea captain's grave, mm-hmm. and he saw a tombstone underneath a tree, and he at the time didn't pay attention to where exactly it was at. I know when I heard about it nearing one of the homecomings, and I had 17 people out there looking for him 2 or 3 days, mm-hmm. but I know why we didn't find it, because it weren't in the spot we were looking. And see, that's the thing that you have to do, is you have to, at times, different.
The great thing nowadays is you could take a GPS
yes.
with you.
Yeah.
And when you find that thing, you can document it so you can find it over and over and over again.
Well, that's when the park, they had that archaeologist, and that was what we did for Vera Willis's, not Vera Willis, but that's what we did with some of the other, like Mylon Willis's house site and the house site behind the big oak tree there. And they kept telling me that I said, there's a house site in there. And they've been in there. Says it's not. No. I said, yes, it is. Keep a looking. I've been in there. You ain't got to tell me. I've been in there.
I'm glad you stand up for yourself.
And they went in there and they finally found it. That's like when I told them, I said, listen, we were in the Gilgo hammock, and that hammock was, at the time when I went there, it was unbelievably thick. The poison ivy was enough to run you crazy. It was so thick. And I found a fence, an old fence, pieces of wire fence, and great rose bush, that Seven Sisters Rose, and then behind it was the old George Gilgo house.
Oh.
The chimney was there. Mm-hmm. Even pieces of the round Battlestone around the bottom of where they took the Battlestone to build the chimney, the fireplace. And this is the time we carried the archaeologists in there, and I told them, I'll have trouble with my legs, so I didn't go all the way in. I said, I'll tell you what to look for. You go in there and look. I'll go tell you what to look. And I told them what to look for. They looked at me like you're out of your mind. Like there's a great, like rose bush. There ain't been nobody lived here since probably the 20s, And how you think a rose bush is going to live in there? And find a fence and every piece I told them, they found.
Well, you definitely impressed them with your knowledge, because they wanted to know. They want to know more.
And that's the thing that knowing that bothers me. Now with my legs, I can't go like I used to could, and I don't want it lost. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want it to not ever be found again. And I'm going to tell you. You know what I want? I want to find. There's one particular graveyard I want to find. I want to find that Dixon graveyard, which is William Clifford Dixon, and William Clifford Dixon is buried beside his father, which is William Clifford Dixon, and George S. Dixon, which is my great-grandfather, are buried in there. They are buried all in, like they're buried there together. And I want to find them because I want Chester to be put in there. That's what I want. I want to be able to, I want to find that cemetery so they can take my ashes there and put them there.
Well,
I know it's with the federal government, complicated. I don't care about it being complicated. We can figure out the complications,
Scattering ashes is no problem. That's no problem.
You know?
But, I mean, burying might be a problem, but scattering ashes is no problem.
But I want a tombstone there that shows I was there.
That's right.
You know? Because I spent my life hunting for tombs and graves that are there.
That's
you know?
Right. That's right.
And I love it. I have enjoyed it to death. I mean, I have enjoyed it. It's been, when I find anything, it's so much fun, you know?
Yeah.
And you're wandering over things and finding it, and it just, you know, they're just...
So you've really taken your, it's not only your heritage, but you're using your knowledge of plants,
Mm-hmm.
and, I mean, just everything you are helps you be a detective over there.
Well, that's it. Yeah, you have to be that. You know, you can't. You know, and sometimes you can't go what is printed. You got to go by. You got to stop and think about. You know how things might be, whatever. You know, there's some things that I know that are family legends. As anybody know, some of those legends you just simply, there's no documentation and you have to believe.
Oh yeah.
You know. And there's some people who they want it all documented. They don't want, you know, and that ruins the part of Ocracoke that has made Ocracoke great now.
Wow.
Was our legends that we've told back and forth with Walt Wolfram, with the Brogue.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's made Ocracoke famous in these days.
Absolutely.
Our legends and things that we've told, you know,
Right.
and those, you know, and that's the same thing. Portsmouth, you can't let those go, you know.
Right. Do you remember that? Did you read the book, The Voyage of the Paper Canoe?
I don't think I do.
Well, it was like 1876. Okay, and he came all the way from Maine. He went all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, and it's when paper manufacturing had become different. It became large sheets, and they had the ability to make a boat, a kayak,
Mm-hmm.
out of paper, you know, soaked oiled paper. And they even made a dome out of paper, and everything. That's when paper dolls became famous, because of this new way of producing paper. So this was like the new age of paper. And so he came all the way down the coast. He wrote this book called The Voyage of the Paper Canoe, Nathaniel Bishop. And when he crossed Ocracoke Inlet, now he has some wonderful stories. He tells about a wedding in Atlantic, and I mean, you know, it's just really wonderful stuff. And when he first of all, a woman came up to him on Ocracoke. Now you can picture this. A woman came up to him in Ocracoke and said, you know, the crabs are going to be eating your head tonight if you try to go over that boat. you know. And he said she had a mouthful of snuff when she said it to him. But he went over. What he saw in this canoe, when we got to Portsmouth, he didn't land on Portsmouth, but out of the bed, out of the sandbank, he saw lots of silver eyes in these dark holes. And what they were caskets sticking out of the sandbank, and there were frogs inside looking out at it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to get that book and read that section of when it talks about, you know, when it coming down the coast. But so I'm thinking, you know, he did not go outside. He was more inside, you know, and he was seeing caskets sticking out of the sandbanks where it had been washed away. So that's one of the things that just happens in Portsmouth.
Yeah.
You know, is that?
Yeah, I mean, when I first met, one of the first homecomings we had, Miss Dot, not Dot, let me think of her name now. She lived to be 100. Oriental.
Yes, I know.
Golly.
I know who you're talking about.
Okay.
I'll add it later too.
Okay. Anyhow. And so I said, listen, I'm Emmeline Dixon's great grandson, She said, Emmeline Dixon. She said, I went to Emmeline's funeral. She said she died down in the middle community there in Tom Gilgo's back kitchen, in the back bedroom. In the bedroom, the bed was in the corner of the bedroom next to the window, and she died in it. And I went to her funeral, and she's buried in Atlantic. By that time, Jack Goodman started up. I said, if you interrupt me, I'll cripple you for life. You'll never be the same. You'll not be able to walk again. Not if you interrupt this. Because this, I mean, that's like heaven.
Precious.
You know,
precious.
That, I mean, she was sitting there repeating it, you know, talking about it was coming off her mind like it was yesterday.
Right.
And I thought, my God, ain't that precious? You know, I mean, I was so Miss Norfolcher.
Norfolcher, that's right.
That's it. And I wouldn't took nothing to see she was kin, you know. The Fulcher line, which was my line, you know, too. That was the same Fulcher line that mine was, you know. And kin, and I tell you, I wouldn't took nothing for it. That was priceless, you know.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, where else can you find that kind of information except somebody's and oral history? You know.
And that's the thing that I have. I mean, I have enjoyed it, and you know, hunting for different things and worrying about. I mean, figured sitting I'm over Battlestone Hill. I don't know how many. I lay in the middle of the bed I lay in my bed one night when it finally came to me. Because I remember hearing that guy who had his house built out of Battlestone, and he was born in it. and the kid was on the beach. And now every time I go out on the beach, I think, well, there ain't no Battlestones out here. Beach weren't in the same spot, you know. So you stop. I went in when the park, you know, give me some of those pictures, and you could see they showed them last few times. You could see the ridge line which been building out, you know, and you can tell that the beach weren't in the same spot, you know. And so that's what that is, you know.
Have you ever heard anything about Mount Trunkston? The big sand hill at the end of the...
No.
Well, I've been trying. That's my Battlestone. I'm trying to track that down. Why it was called Mount Trunkston to start with. On some of the old maps, of course, Trunkston was in the Revolutionary War. And I believe that there must be a wreck of some kind in there. I think there's a part of a boat or something's holding that sand there. You know.
I know that Leona had always said she planted the first pine tree on Portsmouth, and they all laughed about it like
Leona Gilgo.
They all laughed about it like it weren't true. Me and Dale went in that where she told us to go look. And we found it. And I ain't been to it lately, but it was living. And I got pictures of me and Dale sitting in that tree, and the trunk is that big round.
Oh my gosh, that's over 4 feet?
It's that big round, and we were sitting in a limb that was from, you know, that come in it, and I could stand right there and stand in the limb. And at the time, I weren't little then either, you know. And me and Dale found that. And we could verify because we saw it, you know. And so that's the thing that sometimes when people told things, they're right. You know, you have to check about, you know, exactly. You know, some people may say something, you know, and it may not be what, you know, it may not be quite as accurate, you know, in the perception of different things, you know.
Let me make sure we're not going to run out of tape here. Do you mind if we go a little bit longer?
You go as long as you want. I love talking about. I knew that. I mean,
your perception of Portsmouth is so different from Alton's. When Alton, you know, Alton did not have any connection to Portsmouth. He saw it mostly through the eyes of being just an abandoned village.
Yeah, and I don't see it then.
But he also said there was something magical about it. I mean, he said when he would go mulleting with Uriah and Sullivan, And they usually went northward, but sometimes they would go to the south toward Portsmouth. And it was a place of mystery and of curiosity to him.
One of the things that means so much to me was when we first had the first homecomings, and some of those, I think in those times we might have had 10 people born on that island. And now, as of now, Dot just passed, she was the last there were. And I was, in the process of it, through the years, I have had, my God, the love I've had with sharing with those people, you know. I mean, some of them we picked on, like Jessie Lee, you know, she last baby born in Portsmouth, and I tried, I done all I could to get somebody to have a baby from Oakland, don't have it. Lisa, you can ask Lisa O'Neill, she'll tell you. I did all I could to get her to have her, because she could have me easy, and I done all I could to get her to have her baby on Portsmouth, so that she could break Jessie. And I love Jessie Lee, but we just picking, you know, just a prank thing, you know. But now one of this last year when Dot was, you know, we got Dot there and we flew her there and I was so.
Tell the whole story.
Okay.
It was 2010. It was
2010.
Homecoming.
Well, it was Homecoming 2010, and in April, and we were taking at the time, and it was like April 24th, and before then, I knew we'd had trouble getting Dot there, and I knew her health weren't good. And I didn't want Homecoming without Dot. I can't help it. I didn't want to go. I mean, I just, you know, the last few homecomings, whenever she got there, they got her there. The first thing she'd find was me to make sure I knew she was there. You know, and I loved her, and because I especially loved her because I knew she loved the Lord. And when she got in that church, she weren't going in that church. She was going in that church for a special reason. She was going in that church so she could worship the Lord, so she could raise her hands. She was in her church, and she could be free. She could raise her hands. She didn't care. Whether I liked her or not, didn't matter. She was home, and she was worshiping the Lord, you know, when they sung the hymns and stuff. And so I thought, well, we can do this. I found out about Larry Ely doing the flying people there. And he weren't flying people there. He was just doing top thing. But I called him to find out if the possibility he could land. And he said if he got permission he could. And so then I called Richard, and I said, Richard, I want you to go to the park and be
Richard Meisner,
and I want you to be the talk to the park for me, you know, and talk to him about this and all that. And the day before Homecoming, Dot came here. She was on Oakland, and we went out to breakfast that morning. And Dot's youngest daughter was supposed to go with her, not Mary Jo, but the other one, and she was supposed to come. And she had lost a son, and she was still dying, and she weren't quite ready to. She don't like water in him, but she weren't quite ready about that. And Dot said, Chester, because I just figured Mary Jo would go with her, you know. And Dot said, Chester, she said, I want you to go with me, you know. And Mary Jo was okay, and, you know, and said, Chester, she said, you go with Mama, you know. And I thought, well, I just wanted Dot to go, you know. And that's what I care. I weren't trying to get them myself, you know. I knew I could go. I get both of anybody, you know. And I'd already talked to Rudy about it. We already had it arranged, you know. Well, I said, okay, you know. And we rode around. Dot got in my car. We rode around. We went out there, and I got pictures of me and Dot, you know, in the
helicopter?
In the helicopter. Matter of fact, I think it's on, it's on the computer. It's on... There's a little video thing. It's on the computer.
On the website?
Yes.
For the Portsmouth Friends of Portsmouth?
No, it's not on the Friends of Portsmouth thing. It's on, but you can see it.
On YouTube?
Yes, on YouTube.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, we'll have to look for that.
Yes, it's on YouTube. And Dot I'll never forgive that. When she had a piece of paper and she was trying to catch the mosquitoes and an airstrip that was in the thing, she weren't worrying about the helicopter. She was happy. My God, she was happy. And I'll never forget that. And when we took off and went over there. We landed. We flew. I got a picture of. I'll show it to you in a minute. When we were leaving to come back, of the that we in our homecoming had just left over, and we from the air, and that
she was very happy.
She was so tickled. And one of the stop me.
Okay.
But and so we landed and they were all there taking pictures and all that, and carried Dot and carried her into the church, and when they were doing one thing, that when they were doing the hymn sing, because Dot wanted to make sure she got to that, and I knew what it was. She wanted to get in there to that, and she sat on the second seat, and I was sat in the front seat. That's one thing I can say. In every homecoming I've ever been, I've always sat with that crowd. That those old families. I ain't sitting in the back seat for nobody. I don't do it home, and I sit in the front, and I sit right with them, and they're who I am.
Right.
They're part of my
family.
life. They're part of my family. Yeah, they're part of my life. And when I turned and looked, the tears were running down her face, and she had her eyes closed, and her hand was reached to the Lord, worship the Lord. And that was the prettiest sight that I will ever see. Yeah. That was as precious to me as anything, And Dot took, and we went through, we done that, and then we went over to eat, and all these people were taking their pictures with Dot and all this, and said, I didn't have to worry about none of that, I did not have to have my picture taken with Dot. I got tons of them with her,
Yeah.
But I didn't have to do that, because we were who we were,
Right. Absolutely.
And that was precious. And there was times I was worrying about it, that I was scared that I was hurting somebody's feelings, or I was scared that maybe Rudy might be upset by, me having her flu, or somebody, But Dot talked about it the rest of her life, what time she had after that. Every time you talked to her, she was talking about
that plane,
that helicopter flight, And that was precious to me,
And she only lived, 4 months after that?
Yeah.
4 or 5 months?
And I said I was glad that she made it to, that she died after homecoming, because if she had died before homecoming, I may not have made it.
Yeah.
And so now, at least I got a year and a half or so to plot before the next homecoming, so that I know that, I know I don't have to. It's not. I got time to think about it, and I
adjust.
I got time to adjust. I can't give up Portsmouth because she's going, because she wouldn't allow it.
Oh no, that would not make her happy.
Dot's up there, and she's in charge. She's in charge of any history we have. Dot is in charge of seeing we find it. Jesse Lee's in charge of the weather. And one of the day that Dot, it was a few days before she, I think it was the day that she passed. I wrote something, and I wrote it on a piece of paper, and I passed it to Dot's grandson when we went to the service. I weren't going to do it, but I did. And what I had wrote was that at the time before, Dot couldn't go because her pallets weren't ready, because the Lord had to send somebody to Portsmouth after a few artifacts to carry up there to heaven to go with Dot, sit in Dot's house. And that was just a little personal thing, and how the wording of it and all that was just a little personal thing that that she wanted that her place in heaven weren't quite ready. And then finally the Lord did it, so finally it was ready for her to go, you know.
Right.
And but I appreciate all the people, I mean, all of them that I knew, you know, and I loved it all to death, and I have had the most fun hunting for things and doing like those young oaks that I see that are there. They make me feel good to know they're there, you know, and to know that they're multiplying now and spreading around, you know. And then when the national parks, when I can't think of his name, found Bill Willis's grave, my gosh, weren't I happy, because we spent years, and now Dot knew where it was at, and when he told me where it was at, and they carried me there, and what they had to go through to get me there, but they did carry me there so I could see it. They framed it. And when I finally got there to see that grave, then I understand what Dot had said, where she'd said, and what she had said was right, you know. Now I would have never looked at it there in that clump, you know, but it was right when she said, you know.
Well, is there anything different vegetation-wise between Portsmouth and Ocracoke that you know around except for maybe the tree.
Well, Portsmouth now don't have any oaks on it, just that middle community, and so it was mostly cedars, and in the community cemetery, in the community, in the what I call the village commons, you know, there is no old cedars, so that. You know, a few years ago when that flooded and killed a lot of things, and a lot of people, they complained about the park clearing off and all this, and it's foolishness, because if they'd have been like I have, pay attention to trees, they'd have realized they weren't no cedars that are old either. I know where the cedars are, and every one of them, and how old they are. I can tell you where the largest oak is on Oak. I can tell you where its next one up to 10. And I can tell you that with cedars, too, which cedars are faster growing, but still I can do that. And there is no big cedars on Portsmouth like that. So what it tells me, what I understand, is the tide has went, and sometime or another it's killed them. You know, salt water has killed them, and then the new ones come back up. You know. And I can tell that, know that, because of that. You know, on Ocracoke, there's a few, like there's one old bull cypress, and then there's some in some people's yards, and they're not on Portsmouth. Portsmouth did have some oleanders on it. They're dead now.
Oleanders?
Oleanders. Henry Pickett had one in his yard.
Right. And he planted that Formosa naturally.
Naturally.
That's January the 12th, 2010. This is take 2.
And there were glads on Portsmouth. There were several rose bushes, and some of the rose bushes, most of what we call a variety, we call Seven Sisters. And there's some of that running around. There's still a few pieces of fig trees in a few places.
Well, now, were the fig trees there already?
Yeah, the fig trees were there already. And the fig trees, I mean, when I say already, the sailors probably, in some of the old, real old yards, they bought them, they're probably 1700s. Because in colonial records, John Gray Blunt, John Wallace writes to John Gray Blunt, and he says that I won't be able to, John Gray Blunt writes to John Wallace and says I won't be able to come to Portsmouth till fig season. And that was some research that somebody did and says that. And in the process of it, so by saying fig season, there was enough fig trees around in that area that somebody knew when they were talking about it.
Right.
Right. And so that's...
And John Wallace...
That was colonial records.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was his John Blunt's...
business partner.
Yeah.
And see, what they did, they had farms in eastern North Carolina, and that was their selling thing where they sold, all the things they had, they lumber and they had, and all the other stuff that they could do, and that was their market of selling what they had and what they could get,
Now, did they have little? They had little gardens over.
They didn't have any major big. They tried to do some major farming gardens, but none of that worked. You would die. The tide came up, drowned it, so you couldn't support yourself. You could have a small garden, and I think one of the things they did grew good. That was sweet potatoes. That's one of the few things, and then greens and collards and that kind of stuff, but not any long-term things, When I was a little boy, we used to go to Tom Bragg's, and he had peach tree, and we used to go get peaches, and off the peach tree, and then they were also hydrangeas. And there were hydrangeas in the yard, and I remember the hydrangeas. I remember them being so pretty. When I was little, they would be shades of pink and blue, and I remember liking to see them and paying attention to them because some of the blooms were great, big, huge blooms, and they were pretty. And I remember that as a kid.
Yeah. Did they have any grapes over there?
I don't remember any.
Now, did you remember blueberries or
yeah,
blackberries?
Always blackberries, and we call blackberries and dewberries. We call them all blackberries, but blackberries and dewberries, and we call them all that. But we all used to go over there in different places and pick them, and because when we were growing up, that was an important part of eating around here because the dessert. It's actually a French. It's actually a French recipe, and they would. I know about the egg syrup. Mm-hmm. The egg sauce is actually French.
Oh.
And where it came from, how it got here, we don't know. But
Can you tell for the tape what's in there?
Okay, what that is you separate the white of the egg from the red of the egg. I call it red. You said the yolk. You separate that. So then you take the white and beat it like you're going to beat meringue. You take the yolk, I call red, you take the red of the egg, and you put it in a bowl, and you put some sugar in it. I like to put some nutmeg in it. Some almonds, almond flavor, and I like to put some almond flavor in it. And once you've got that meringue thick, then you dump the red back with the sugar and the almond back in the meringue, and you build it. And it makes like a whipped cream. Fluffy whipped cream, and it's raw. It's it's nothing but raw eggs, but it's wonderful. And we eat it on top of like a blackberry dumpling or anything hot like apple dumplings or anything like that. That's what we eat.
My mother makes her snow cream like that.
Okay, yeah.
Puts pineapple in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I always worry about her. I say, well, I'll call the ambulance. Maybe they get to the snow. You eating raw eggs?
Mm-hmm. And so that's what we did. Everybody used to eat it that way, and so they were there.
Were there any other foods like that were maybe specific to Ocracoke and Portsmouth?
Well, I probably.
Or just Southern traditions?
Just Southern traditions in all is really what it was. I know in both places they use that yopon for tea, and that kind of thing. And I've seen one of the interviews one time where somebody was making light rolls and they were saving the water that they boiled potatoes. And they were saving the potato water to put in the light rolls.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
And so they had to survive, and they had to do so. They
don't waste anything.
No, they didn't. They couldn't. They didn't have any choice.
Right. Did your grandfather ever take you to any celebrations over there on Portsmouth? I don't remember any celebrations.
I remember Henry Pickett and a bunch of them clamming one time, and we went over there and they were clamming and all that. And I remember that they all liked Granddad, and Granddad was familiar with them because he had mailboat and all that, So he was familiar with him, and they were familiar with him, and because I know some people when they saw some people coming, they go in there and close the door. And that weren't good for Portsmouth, and that probably hurt Portsmouth.
I had heard the same thing. They were particularly, seems like, I don't remember who it was now, told me that somebody had let a drummer, a door-to-door salesman onto the island, and he didn't find anybody home.
Yeah, because they
didn't open the door.
They didn't know they didn't, and that probably hurt the island. The only thing I see, I pay attention, I don't see anything as far as a community function group that helped on the community. I hear some about the church, but nothing as far as any group that worked on the village to help, like Oak does, to help make anything good for people to come. Have you? I haven't never found any evidence that there was any group, civics kind of group-minded people. That they weren't nothing like that minded. They.
I think they were just in survival mode most of the time, and.
I know that Dot used to tell me that when they were growing up, they would take and they would eat the chicken eggs. They would eat regular. The duck eggs they would put in cakes, and they would go over to Beacon Island, and they would in Shell Castle, and they would get chicken seagull eggs, and you use seagull eggs instead.
Really?
Cooking with seagull eggs.
How about that? I hadn't heard that before.
And I think I had to think about that. Where you had to survive. And I know growing up here. When we were little, everybody thinks you like seafood. Now, if you eat much as some of us did, you get tired of that now.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, because
we have a barrel of salted fish that lasted all winter, and that's all you ate.
And you see, then like you fried, your mama might fry fish, but then she fried fish, and then the backbone, she fried that, and there was always a plate on the table with the fish gizzards and liver. We never eat fish without eating the liver and gizzards too, And now nobody thinks about
mullet, yeah. Mullet, gizzards and liver.
I mean, they were always on the table eating it,
And did you ever eat trouts? The sound of a trout?
The roe, you mean?
Well, no. This is the air bladder in the in the
trout. I didn't. I never. Not.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. But I mean, we always, different things like that. We, sometimes Granddaddy and Grandma would fix us some lunch or something, and we'd go over there and eat it on the way. We'd get all that. Sometimes Granddaddy would stop like in the water, and we would eat it before we go ashore, or eat it on the way back, or whatever. Or sometimes Granddaddy would take. Now I was little, and I weren't too crazy about clams, raw clams like that, but he would open oysters. And you had to eat the little crabs alive,
Oh.
You had to eat them. You had to eat them alive, And then
I couldn't do that.
And then he would take and
I can't eat them cooked like that.
He would open clams and small clams, and we'd eat them alive. I eat them whole like that. I remember going over there fishing with somebody when I was real young, and we'd been over by the artesian well, and I had to get out and walk the boat through some of the shoals where it was, because everybody else was in it.
Over.
Through that. And when I did, I kept stepping on clams, and I kept picking them, throwing them in the boat. They said, Chester, if you throw any more clams, you'll sink us. They were so thick at the time I couldn't walk for them.
Oh my gosh.
And that's the truth.
Wow.
They were so thick I had trouble walking across the bars.
Wow. Mm. One of the best meals I had was Portsmouth Clams. Rob Lamar was the ranger over there, and he and his wife Rebecca were staying over there, and I was staying with them, and they had gone out clamming, and they fixed clams. Boy, that was good eating.
I actually have Henry Pickett's clam chowder recipe.
Oh, that's right. You told me you had that.
Which is different than a regular clam chowder. Henry Pickett didn't put potatoes in his. he didn't have potatoes, and he cooked from what he had. He had the biggest cooler in the world. That was his back door. There was clams to nonstop. He would use he had some onions that he grew them in his yard, and then salt pork and bacon was an easy thing. Everybody had some of that.
Right.
So that's what he made his clam chowder out of.
Now, were wild onions? Were they wild onions?
Well, in those times, there probably weren't many wild, but probably what they were was what we call multipliers. They grow and they have a little onion and it falls from the top, and they fall down and come up again. And the old people kept them. They kept growing. They wouldn't dare use them all because they
want to keep the source going.
They kept the source going rather than the seed. Sometimes people did that, but it was an onion, but it's called multipliers.
I never heard those.
And see how he had them out in his yard, and in a little garden patch or whatever, and he'd go get them,
Wow. What? So his recipe had no potatoes because he didn't have potatoes.
He didn't have them. I mean, he may have once in a while put them in there, But this recipe didn't. And he ground clam. It says that he ground the clams right fine,
Oh, okay.
But he had plenty of them,
Oh yeah, he did.
Weren't like somebody just doing a little tiny bit,
Right. Do you remember Lizzie at all?
I've seen her, and I was so little I don't remember. I mean, I was so little that I remember seeing her,
Yeah.
I remember them all being out in the sun was clamming, and there was in the water, and and that kind of thing, and I remember
they were clamming with rakes. Were they signing or?
I don't think they were. They may, if they had a rake, it was a yard rake. You weren't. I don't remember a clam rake. I remember it may have been a rake they made. I give one to the National Park Service. I mean, not National Park Service. I give them the fisherman's where I used to be.
The exhibit, the little museum.
Yes,
Fisherman's Museum here in
and it's made out of nails.
Oh yeah.
They took a piece of wood and they put long nails in it and bend them, and that was how they made them.
How about that?
And he had a little tiny handle, and they just, and then when they hit it, then they could dig it up, and it was a handmade kind of thing, and it was made out of nails.
How about that? That's great stuff, Chester. And Chester, I don't want to tire you out, but
I'm fine.
I want to talk about your tradition of decorating the church at Christmas. When did that start for you?
I don't even know. I've done it so long I don't remember.
Yeah.
This past year I didn't. It was so cold we didn't go, and
This is the first year in like 30, 40 years?
Yeah, something like that.
30, 40 years?
Even when we I got a picture of the tree in the church for Old Christmas. Mm-hmm. And remember, we were going to have that nice decorating, and I decorated it, and I got pictures of them when we were going to have that Old Christmas tree,
And we had bad weather then?
Yeah, we had bad weather then, and it's, one time I was staying at the house that Marie took part of, and I was at the house, and I had a converter that went on a battery, electricity kind of thing, and I had it. So I done it. So I hooked it up, and I carried some Christmas lights and strung some Christmas lights all outside the house, and plugged and turned them on. We went off, and we walked and come back, and there was Christmas lights on Portsmouth strung. Oh. And we didn't even have a camera at the time, but that was, that was wonderful. And I've said to somebody when I go and decorate, it doesn't matter. It doesn't bother me that nobody sees it. I ain't doing it anybody see.
You're just doing it for.
I'm doing it for the satisfaction in my mind that I know it's done. Right. For the satisfaction in my mind that it's not left out. That it's not being forgotten.
And I can understand. You do it to show your love for your family and for their home place, and for all those people who did so much to struggle to survive there.
We at Leona Pastoret.
Leona Gilgo?
Yeah, I went over there and made a white wreath thing and put on her house. I got pictures of it on her house. You know, like traditionally you put a white thing on somebody so somebody knows there's a death there.
Right.
Well, when that happened, I went there and put it on her front door and took pictures of it so that I could see it. And I got in there where there were some pictures of it on that house, and the house is half fallen down. But it didn't matter. It was still in reverence to know that she was there.
Absolutely.
You know.
Absolutely.
I mean, that she was thought of.
Yep, absolutely.
And we carry boughs of cedar and we get boughs of cedar from on board, and we carry ribbon, you know, and I bite myself. I mean, it costs me to do it, you know, but I don't do it, you know. I mean, I don't get the money from someplace else.
How you show your love for
That's how I show my love. When I get ready to decorate, I never ask anybody for permission. I figure it's better to ask for forgiveness than his permission. And I go and put it on, and I put something on every single building.
Wow.
I mean, within reason, I'm kind of walking distance. So
yeah.
That and all that. So they've done an article in the state magazine about it, and they've different things have been printed about it. But I didn't do it for none of that. I did it because I love it. You know. That it makes me feel good, you know, to know that it's done, you know.
Right. Let's see. I'm going to have to end because I don't want to wear you out, and I can come back. I can come back later. But I do want you to talk about. Do you have any visions for Portsmouth for the future?
Yeah, I do. The thing that I find difficult now, I mean, is the mosquitoes is the biggest problem. I mean, and I'm not saying that for me. I'm saying that for the public. You know, because the national parks are spend close to $1 million in exhibits, and then if it's fixed, if you have rain and it's so bad nobody can see it, then that's $1 million wasted.
Right.
Unfortunately, you know. But what I would love to see, I first of all, I want to say, and I'm very grateful. In later years, there was a time that I thought we'd lose another house. There was a time that I thought it would all fall. But then there was a time they started fixing it, and now because. Like Tom Gilgo's house on the way to Henry Pickett's, the termites left that because they thought they'd starve. They weren't enough there to keep termites alive, but they fixed it, and I God knows I was grateful, you know, because I didn't think it would ever be, you know. Them termites left it because they were scared they'd starve. There weren't enough there for them to eat, and now you. See, I can walk through their village and nothing's falling apart. If anybody complains about that, they need to be slapped inside the head. You know? They ain't seen what I've seen. Right. Walk through that village and it's not falling apart. And I'm proud of that. My God, ain't I proud of it, you know? And what I know that some people fuss about vegetation and all that being all cleared. I'd like to see them plants and stuff. I'd like to see them. I'd like to see some trees be planted that would survive oaks and things like that, where they would they survive the cedar. You know, if you put cedars in, they're going to die. And if but I'd like to see some vegetation put there now. You know, eventually, to keep it to help that. You know, and I think as time goes on, it just little at a time. You know, it's hard to know what will happen to Portsmouth with history going on, and everybody trying to find history and all that. You know, it's wonderful to be able to share what you have and what in your heritage. You know,
are you concerned about global warming at all for Portsmouth? For Oak?
No, because I can't worry about somebody else's time. I can only worry about my time.
So you don't think it's going to happen in our time?
No, I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, in our time, I don't think, you know. And I can't worry about 10, 50 years from now, you know. I can only address what I know, you know, and while I'm here, you know, and if I make it better while I'm here, then I've done good, you know. That's like, you know, the artifacts, the night park bodies and all that. I know they have them. What good are they if nobody sees them? You know that. You know, I would rather let my stuff that I have last 100 years and be seen and then go to nothing than 200 years and nobody see it and nobody know where, you know, nobody know the history it came from. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, that's just me.
I know Cape Hatteras has one of the original sewing machines that sewed the pieces of the wings of the Wright brothers, and I don't know that that's on display. And I don't think it's the fault of the staff as much as, you know, it's a money problem, it's a facility problem, it's a, you know, not knowing. I
got one of the oil lamps from Mr. Burris used to carry the flame to the top of the light ice.
No. Oh my gosh.
In that bedroom. I got 2 Civil War bayonets that was used here either on Oakland or Portsmouth.
Wow.
In that bedroom. I have some glasses, drinking glasses that are amnesty glass, and they're pontoon marked hand blown. And they're the juice glasses, pontoon marked hand blown, and they are very, very, very old.
Right, and you're saying Pontel, because that's when you
blow
the pipe and you break them off. Yeah. That's the mark on the bottom.
Yeah, that's
I'm doing that for the tape sake.
Yeah. Because... And there's a cannonball in there, small shot solid cannonball. There is a crock steam dimble pan from the Pamlico Inn, which went down in the 44 Hurricane. Right. And the morning of the 44 Hurricane, the lady I lived with put clam chowder in it and carried it to her house to feed her children, her family.
And that's why it survived.
And that's why it survived, and I have it, you know. And then I have crocks that are from different people from Portsmouth. And there's a family Bible, the Roberts family Bible in there from Portsmouth. And that was in the Wayab house, you know. So I have a ton of stuff that has to do with Ocracoke and Portsmouth. There's a decoy in there. That's from Portsmouth.
Maybe I can come back and do some photography. And I won't say this trip because I'd like to bring some like yardsticks and maybe it's not so cold we can take stuff outside. The lights better, but it's a little bit too cold right now.
Yeah. But I mean, in all of it, I
just to document it.
Yeah.
But I know what you're saying. I mean,
I have there's a crock in there belongs to George Gilgo. There's a platter, a blue willow platter that belongs to George Gilgo. There's a gravy bloat belongs to George Gilgo. That family.
Wow.
And it might be. There's a blue poncho marked glass.
Blue glass.
Which is blue, dark blue. And it's from Portsmouth. And it's unbelievably thin and it's wonderful.
Wow. Yeah, I bet you that's beautiful.
It is.
I guess you've seen in the Ocracoke Preservation exhibit, you know, Maritime Museum has on loan the red glass globe.
From my aunt.
Yeah.
My grandfather found it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's incredibly delicate to me to be out in the inlet. I mean,
did you know my grandfather found it?
I believe I did because I think you had told me that before. Is that on the label that they used in there?
Yeah, I think it is.
I think it is.
My grandfather.
They better. But yeah, so there's some wonderful things in this area. And before we close, I just wanted to ask you. I had heard that there was a a beautiful tree. When we're talking about trees, it brought it to my mind. That's kind of up near the horse corral that they called the Dancer or the something like that. Do you remember hearing about that?
They used to, now I don't know if this is what you're talking about, there used to be a cedar and it was gnarled and twisted, and they used to have pictures of it, and finally it died. I think the remains of it is still there, but it's dead now.
Yeah.
And the oaks that grew around it years ago, they, were not around it, and the tree was so old that Miss Sir Ellen, which lived to be 100 and lacking 2 months being 105, when she was a little tiny baby, a little tiny girl, wasn't just understanding what was going on. The legend was if you took a lock of her hair, you took a lock of somebody's hair, and if they had asthma, you put it in that tree, you wouldn't have it no more. And her father carried her down there, and they took a lock of her hair and put in it. And she never had asthma no more and lived to be lacking 2 months from being 105.
Wow.
And somewhere there's a tape of her telling that interview. I was there at the time when she told it. So, and I don't know whatever happened to the tape. I don't know if the school's got it or whatever. But I know that it existed because I heard her tell it,
Yeah.
And I got a good memory, so I can tell it,
Now that's Miss Muzelle?
That's Mr. Ellen.
Sorry.
Sarah Ellen.
You mentioned, did the school do some oral histories here? Or?
Yeah, they did. You're growing up, yeah.
Oh, cool.
I'm going to tell you about an artifact that I have. I am going to give this to the Friends of Portsmouth as long as they can take and pay for having it restored. It needs to be restored. Mm-hmm. In the old church, the one's not at Portsmouth.
The one that got destroyed?
The one that got destroyed in 1913. They were a chair on the altar, and it was part of that same bedroom furniture that came from Marion Grace. Is what it is. And there used to be one on the church that's in there now. I mean, the church is now. I don't know what happened to that chair. It looks the chair that I have. The picture of the chair I have. I don't think it's that chair. I think it's the second chair that goes with it. I think it's a little tiny bit different, but I know they were. It was the same. And how I got it is how I know. But my neighbor, it was from my neighbor's house, and they got it from there when we went down. They went all down, got some stuff, and they bought it or whatever. Somebody give it to them, and the lady, then she passed away. Then the mother passed away. Then the mother. The guy I grew up with, his mother, when she inherited the house and all that, she said, Chester, she said, it's here somewhere. When she died, then her son found it, and they give it to me. And it's got to be restored because it's got some damage to it. But I've saved a lot in my life, so I understand having something redone,
Right.
And there's, I'm hoping there's one thing that's at Portsmouth. I'm hoping we can eventually use either in Henry Pickett's house or someplace. There is, because in Tom Gilgo's house, that arm duck bits was from the Marine Hospital.
I think years ago, somebody showed me some iron buck beds that had the hooks on them where you did the rope, because that's where you put the mattresses on and you might not even have a mattress. Mm-hmm. I cannot remember who showed me those.
They were in Tom Gilgo's house on the way to Henry Pickett's house, that little house. They were in there. They were gray painted. I remember they had gray paint on them, kind of thing, And I remember that's
Battleship gray.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I'm going to have to just pick my own brain here and find out where I saw this other one. But somebody showed it to me. I think it might have been Levin Fulcher.
Mm-hmm.
Might have been Levin Fulcher. Anyway, I want to thank you for your time. I have broken my own rule, and we have been an hour and a half instead of an hour. But
I already knew they'd be broken.
But I'm grateful that you'll have me back, and we'll do some picture taking.
Anytime.